Captain Steve. We got the latest here from Captain Steve. The truth about the Boeing 787 fuel control switches. Let's get into the video.
This video, and I want to get into discussing what can and can't happen with these fuel control switches. Exactly how do they work? I think people wish would have happened to them, or how they hope they would work, but wishing and hoping are not reality. The reality of
Shout out to Steve for that one. Shout out to Steve.
How these switches work is very simple, and they're designed to be a very simple operation on purpose so that they don't fail at the most critical portions of flight, like right after rotate.
He's going to jump into how the fuel control switches work, how they function. I'm sure you've seen a couple of those videos already. Quick recap, they have the metal intent as shown there. You have to pull them up and physically move them for them to move. They're not going to vibrate out of place. Steve also gets into a replacement part that's also noted on the AAIB's report. They replaced the switches twice. They replaced the entire component, not just one or two pieces, the entire component. It's probably faster that way. And let's skip ahead to where he starts talking about the fuel switches in depth.
A mechanical switch, and that purely mechanical switch operates a relay, and that's a physical, it's a real relay. It provides 28 volt DC, and actually it only uses 14 volts of DC, but it's direct current from the switch I just moved to a relay, and the relay only has two positions. It's either open or it's closed. All three of those valves open up at that time and allow fuel from the tanks in my airplane, a very strong boost pump that's providing pumped pressure, positive pressure, that fuel through that now open line. So again, physical switch provides electricity, not a digital signal, but actual 28 volt electricity to a relay that then closes.
So Steve's logic is sound. I find it hard to question, especially with the diagram. It looks like the communication piece from the fuel control switches clearly connects to the, let's rewind it some. The thrust control module clearly connects to that relay there, and that relay is what sends the signal to the fuel valves. You also have this 28 volt DC power, and it sends the electrical signal as well. It's what powers the device, and Steve will break that down.
It provides that same 28 volt DC to all three of those valves and all three own little simple system. Let me show you how simple the system is. Because as I was researching this video,
Steve breaks out here the elementary school light switches, if you will. The batteries connected to the wires. The wires provide power to the switch. The switch serves as the relay to allow power to continue traveling to the light bulb, which in turn turns on the light bulb. Another way of putting it is the flow of water. There's already water flowing in your home. When you turn the valve, you're essentially acting as the relay, allowing the water to continue flowing out. Here he's going to get into the FADEC and the EEC, because a lot of people have brought up FADEC and EEC. So let's see his response.
And so forth. So I'm going to show you a schematic here. Let's talk about the RDC and the EECs, because on this illustration I've got here for you, you can see up in the upper top of the page something that's called the RDC. People have been talking about that. They've been talking about the FADEC. They've been talking about the EECs. All three of those systems are designed to govern potential overboost of an engine. None of them are connected directly to those three valves or any one of those three fuel shutoff valves. And that is only controlled by the position of the fuel cutoff switches, and that's it. And there are two separate systems. There's the left engine and there's the right engine. There is no interconnection between the two of them at all. So for anybody to believe that there was some sort of errant signal that came from the FADEC somehow in a back route way to send a digital signal or any sort of signal to any one of those valves to close, that's simply not how the system works. Hear me clearly on this, my friends. I'm just explaining to you how the fuel control switches work. They provide 28 volt DC electricity to that relay, and that relay provides that same 28 volt DC to those.
I get it. So you got to play it safe. He's not initially placing blame on any one of the pilots. He's merely talking about the AAIB report and his translation of it and what it implies, which is essentially that it was manual transference that moved the switches, manual intervention. It doesn't seem to have been a faulty signal because it's highly unlikely. I get it that the investigation has to conclude, and pretty much you got to dig in and rule that fact out. But right now, it does seem like it was definitely manual intervention or manual intention that brought down that plane.
Now, what if the whole airplane were to lose electrical power? Would that relay open?
This is a big one.
It would not. Why? Because it's direct current coming directly from the battery of the aircraft through something called the hot battery bus. Think of it like the battery on your car. If for some reason you were to lose total electrical power on your car, your battery would still have power. It wouldn't drain immediately. And the system is designed this way on purpose. You always want to have 28 volt DC going to those 3 valves to keep them open to provide fuel for the engines. Because the worst thing that could happen is if you had a total electrical failure and both engines flamed out because you designed the system poorly. And how do I know that? Air India went into the simulator right after Air India 171 crash. They rotated off the ground and they programmed the computer to be a total electrical failure on the airplane. The engines both kept running. Why? Because you can't program the battery to die. The battery still had a charge in it, and it was going to run for probably 30 to 40 more minutes. So those valves are going to stay open for at least that long.
That's a great explanation. Even if the electronics failed, there was still power in the batteries, and as Steve is alluding to, it would have had 30 to 40 minutes left of charge. So it doesn't seem like electrical failure was the cause of this accident. But let me know in the comments what you think.
So if you were to lose total electrical AC failure on the airplane, all the generators were to go bad, you didn't have any power whatsoever, they would still fail to the open position because that 28 volt DC is coming straight from the airplane's battery, and there's nothing in the system other than the fuel control switches that can cut off that 28 volt DC to those valves.
So he's talking about the bulletin, the advisory that was sent out in regards to switches possibly moving by accident. It was just a bulletin. It wasn't a mandatory thing. So it was just a matter of this could possibly happen, but Air India saw no cause to continue investigating or to take any action.
The scrutiny of maintenance records revealed that now read this very carefully, you might want to underline it, the throttle control module was replaced on this aircraft, the one that crashed, in 2019 and again in 2023. Now, what is the throttle control module? It is, let's go back to that picture of the schematic, it's that entire unit. It includes the throttles, the reversers, the fuel control switches, a couple of other devices. And why would they replace that whole unit if there was some question about the fuel control switches? Because that's the way they do it. If there's something wrong with the throttles, if there's something wrong with the reversers, maybe they're a little sticky or somebody spilled something in them, and they don't try to fix.
Yeah, it's easier to just replace the whole thing than to find what is exactly wrong with it. I understand that operational aspect. Got to get the planes back up in the air as quick as possible.
According to the report, they were placed back into the run position, and then after the crash and all of that tremendous G-force in the crash and the fireball and everything else, we've got a picture right here of both of those fuel control switches still firmly in the run position. It's inconceivable that they somehow 60 seconds earlier than that vibrated into the cutoff position on their own.
Yeah, that's firm evidence right there. Those switches did not vibrate into the off position by accident. Not if they were recovered after the accident in the on position, with that heavy impact. Just doesn't make sense.
So these switches moved from run to cutoff. We may never know why. We do know how, but the why is going to escape us, and we may never get an answer to that. But
when he says we know how, he's saying that, hey, we know that it was manually transitioned. That's where he's getting at.
I wanted to clarify exactly how these fuel control switches work so that there's not any misinformation out there going forward about a very simple switch that operated according to its design.
Well, guys, that's Captain Steve's take. Let me know your thoughts, opinions in the comments. I'm kind of on board with this assessment, if you will, that the fuel switches were manually transitioned. But we'll see when the final report comes out and all the information is made available to the public. Appreciate you flying with me. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and safe flying, folks.